Okay, we'll get started. I declare the agenda briefing session for Tuesday the 21st of November open, and I welcome councillors, staff and members of the gallery. Thank you. Disclaimer, the agenda briefing sessions are used to inform councillors on the items of business to be presented and discussed at the forthcoming Ordinary Council meeting. These meetings are open to members of the public who may request to present a deputation to council relating to an item on the agenda. No decisions are made at these meetings, although councillors can request additional information or alternative wording be provided to allow for motions to be prepared for consideration at the forthcoming Ordinary Council meeting. Any statement regarding any planning or development application made during an agenda briefing session is not to be taken as notice of approval. Anyone who has an application lodged with the Shire must obtain and should only rely on written confirmation of the outcome of the application and any conditions attached to the decision made by council. An audio and visual record will be made by means of live streaming of these proceedings and uploaded to the Shire's YouTube page for viewing. Acknowledgement of country. The Shire of Harvey acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land and their continuing connection to the land, waters and community. We pay our respects to all members of the Aboriginal communities and their cultures, and to elders past, present and emerging. And I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the elders and emerging elders that we have in our gallery today. Records of apologies and leave of absence. I have Councillor Boyland. I wish to take this opportunity to acknowledge the recent passing of John Sayborn, OAM JP, and I wish to extend our sincere condolences to the family of John Sayborn. Mr Sayborn, the first Shire of Harvey Freeman, is remembered for his decades of community work, 36 years of service as a Shire Councillor, including 10 years as the Shire President. A Justice of the Peace since 1984, he was made a member of the Order of Australia in 2015. Mr Sayborn was a passionate supporter of local football. He was honoured as a life member of the Brunswick Parents and Citizens Association, Harvey Brunswick National Junior Football Council, Harvey Brunswick Football Club, South West Umpires Association and the WA Local Government Association. His efforts were foundational in shaping the Harvey region's local football culture. He leaves behind a legacy of passion, dedication and care for the local community. So I'd like to pass on our condolences to Margaret and his family. Declarations of members and officers' personal interests. Councillors, are there any more than are up on the screen? Councillor Caboni.
Thank you, Madam President. Item 5.1.3, I'll declare an impartiality interest as I'm a member of the Harvey Brunswick National Football Club, and I'll stay in the room for that. And item 7.1.1 and 7.1.2, the tenders for limestone and gravel, I'll declare a financial interest there as MG and Bulkers in the same line of business, and I'll leave the room for that.
Thank you, Councillor Caboni. Any more? Councillor Hitchcock.
I need to declare an impartiality interest for item 5.1.4, the lease for lot 208 youth, because I'm on the committee.
Thank you. Councillors, do we have any more declarations of interest? You right, Graham?
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, councillors, we have one deputation at this moment, and I invite Mr Wayne Stammers up in regards to item 5.3.2, proposed use not listed telecommunications infrastructure. Welcome, Mr Stammers.
Thank you. Thanks very much, and thanks for letting me come along and speak to you about this. I'm a farmer in Wokel in actually Benja in this case, because I've got a farm that extends from Boycott to Benja. And I've been farming in this area for 20 years. As I said, I'm growing to love this, the way that Harvey district presents itself. It's a nice place to live in, one of the last true little farming townships in WA. It's so close to Perth. It's a great atmosphere, also very productive, and I'm saying let's be careful not to spoil it. I was shocked when I received your notification that a tower building company wished to build a 12-storey high communication tower virtually in the middle of my beautiful farm. My wife and I have owned this farm for 18 years. It was originally a dairy and a cute little farm. The tower has to be very big, as is located near the river, which means it's very low and therefore has to be high. Unfortunately, it's located virtually in the middle of my farm, as my farm wraps itself around it. Also has been placed in a large cleared area, and this is very exposed. You can probably see that first photo I took yesterday, showing the proposed spot for it. It's actually going to be higher than that. I've run out. The paper didn't go for high enough. It's actually at 12 stories high. It's going to be actually quite a bit higher than I've shown there. You can see in the background, far in the background, there's another tower. That's probably about the size of this one, I'd say. Anyway. So besides devaluing the property by hundreds of thousands of dollars, for us the biggest reason we love the farm is the beautiful country farm look of the area. This huge, ugly, out-of-place structure with solar panels and guide wires and virtually with no form of shelter from the view will drive us mad. You can see the view from the back lawn of the house there in yesterday's photo. It's enough to make us sick. So much so that we have decided to sell the farm if it goes ahead, rather than suffer the consequence of looking at it forevermore. We did have plans to build a house down in the clump of trees near the tower site, but that will be obviously out of the question once the tower goes in. Another problem is that we sometimes use aerial fertiliser spreading when paddocks get too wet for the tractor. I can't see the pilots liking a big tower in their flight path. Right, so to be practical about it, I know we have to have good communications these days. There's no doubt about that. Everybody wants it. But my farm is virtually on the boundary of the massive Kemerton Industrial Park. That's where the tower belongs, in my opinion. Ironically, that tower will obviously service the park as it's on the boundary of the park, and it goes out about 10 kilometres, so it's obviously there to serve the industrial park, but it's built on farming country. I mean, why? It doesn't make sense to me. I also noted there's 2 other towers in the area that are not being used for cell phones. You can see that from the photos I took yesterday that there's a big tower, it's a gas pipeline communication power. It's only recently been built in the background, quite clear to see. You can quite clearly see it from my back lawn there. And my back lawn's further away from that tower than I am when I took the photo. So it's not that far away, that big new tower. Why can't they use that? Or they could just build a tower on the industrial park, which is only a kilometre or so to the west of us. And there's 1 million acres there. We can pick a spot rather than put it on my farm. Near my farm, virtually, like I say, next to my house there. Other shires have policies about communication towers, and I've got a copy here of the Shire of Rockingham's policy, and it does spend a lot of time, whilst regarding we need to provide an efficient communications network for the community, there is a need to ensure that telecommunications infrastructure is developed in a manner that is compatible with the surrounding environment and will not overly adversely impact on the amenity of the area. And also the document goes through like you know, plan to mitigate any potential visual impacts to the community and so on all the way through this document, which I think obviously there's a bit of a problem. No one wants one of these towers right in front of their house, but everybody wants a tower for communication, so there's got to be some sort of a balancing act going on to keep everyone happy. So I see here another very big tower is on the north side of Brunswick town site. There's another photo of there, that big one there, and that, according to the other thing you've got, which is that one, that shows the communication towers, as far as I can see. I'm not an expert on this stuff, but I'm just trying to look it up on the computer. And you see you've got two in Harvey there, and you've got 15 in Bunbury and 5 over here. There's none in my area, a fairly big area there in the middle there. But we can still use our telephones and things, so they must go a fair way. I think they go up to, well, I don't know, I think they go up to 40 kilometres. I mean, I know the Royal Signs, it's 80 kilometres offshore, and we still get telecommunication from shore. So it seems that there's other more aesthetically suitable sites are possible, maybe a little bit more expensive, although if they use the existing towers, one would not think they would be more expensive. But I think, I don't know much about this stuff, but I think that the communication tower people, they're not telecom, I think they build towers, I'm not sure, and they don't want to use other people's towers because they want their own towers so they rent them out. I know the neighbour's not too worried about the aesthetics because they don't do farming and they just stay in their house, and they're getting, I think, $30,000 a year rent for this little tower, so that mitigates any of their devaluation of their property, and they don't look at it. And they put it right down the back. It worries me a lot because it's in front of my house, but they put it right down the back so they can't see it. So, yeah, what else would I say? I think I was going to try. I'm asking you to disallow this application on the grounds that one, it has a high adverse visual impact on the surrounding area, particularly on me. There is more appropriate sites nearby in the industrial area, in my opinion. There's a high chance of co-location into existing nearby towers with that policy for the Rockinghamshire. They insist that the communication people strongly co-locate. They put more than one set of communications on. If there's a tower there, they should be using it. And might be hard to talk these people into because they want their own tower so they can rent it out, I guess. But I think it's up to people like yourselves to put your foot down and say, no, we don't want towers willy-nilly all over the place. Be very careful where you put them and put a bit of thought into it and try not to cause too much hardship. I see here there's no effort. It looks like no effort has been made to mitigate the adverse effects of the visual degradation. But when, even if they put it a few hundred metres in the same area, it's got to be right there for some stupid reason, which I don't believe it would have to be right there. Even if they shifted it, no one spoke to me about it. And with the Shire of Rockingham, they have to submit scale drawings and to show how tall it is and how it affects this, that and the other. Well, I didn't get any of that. I just a little tiny speck on a little thing that came to me. Doesn't show the tower. They don't want to talk about it, but Shire of Rockingham insist they do it. So everyone knows what effect it's going to have on the other place. So, yeah, so, I don't know.
Thank you, Mr. Sanders.
Any questions?
Councillors, do we have any questions for Mr. Sanders? Councillor Cavani?
So you're the owner of 546 Mitchell Road? Is that what we're talking about here, the Woke Club Tower?
Yeah, the Woke Club Tower, yeah.
Through the street, on Mitchell Road, yes?
Yeah, it's not 546.
So on page 41 it says that Wakelap area and the landowners at 546 Mitchell Road were agreeable to the site acquisition.
Yeah, that's the neighbour.
That's the neighbours where the tower is.
That's
So
the
the
neighbour.
tower's not on your place?
No, it's just it's right, it's basically in the middle because my farm wraps right around it, as you can see on the photo.
Oh, right, so it's not on your property,
No.
that's all, that's where I was confused.
Well, they don't mind it because they're getting 30 grand a year. And they don't farm, they don't care.
Yeah, I can
They've
understand.
got trees around the house, I won't look at it.
Yeah,
But I've got to look at it, and I farm, so,
yeah, fair enough.
yeah.
Okay, councillors, do we have any further questions?
Just got a question.
Councillor Caprigo?
In the photograph, I see there's a centre pivot
Yeah.
sprinkler system. Is that
That's
on
my,
your property?
that's my pivot, yeah.
So the location of the tower, is that going to impact the operation of that irrigation system?
Well, that used to be a dairy there, and that pivot's a 100 acre pivot. And it's going to sweep right around on the property where the tower's being built. And the tower's being built very close to the centre of the pivot irrigator, right? Because it's just on the fence there. I subdivided, when my daughter, that was a 700 acre property, and when I bought it 18 years ago, my daughter needed a place to live, so I subdivided 100 acres off for her. So I went right in the middle there, that block, and my daughter, she had to go to shift to town, she sold that block.
So the question I've got is, if the tower was built there, does it impact the operation of that irrigation
Only
system?
if I buy that property back again,
Oh, okay.
and it goes around, which I didn't. I should have done that when my daughter sold it, which I had it now. We wouldn't have this bloody problem.
Thank you.
But the other thing I might make, it's a bit facetious of me, but I think it would be good if the Shire of Harvey had one of these killer communication infrastructure policy documents. And this, I think it's a pretty good document, and maybe you need one sooner or later. I don't know.
Okay, thank you, Mr Sanders. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll leave this with someone in case I want to look at it.
Very welcome, briefly.
Yeah.
Thank you. So are there any more deputations? I've got a sponsor here. Okay, councillors, we'll go into the officers' report. So 5.1.1, which is the Diploma of Local Government, request by Councillor Robert Coleman. If there's any questions in regards to that, I'll ask Councillor Coleman to step out. Councillors, do we have any questions? No? Okay, thank you. 5.1.2, the lease of the Harvey District's Creative Arts Centre. Any questions? .1.3, the lease for Harvey Brunswick National Football Club. Councillor Dickinson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I just noted that in the documentation it doesn't mention the signage around the oval, the sponsorship signage on the fences, and also the shelters on the edge or the scoreboard, and I was just wondering how they're all going to be managed, as well as the Brunswick Rec Centre change rooms, because I understand that HBL use those when there's games. And also the replacement of the lights that are being upgraded there, how's that going to be funded and maintained in the future, because it says in the document that HBL will not be responsible for that. And then it also says ceiling replacement, and I was just wondering what the condition of the ceiling was for HBL to mention it in the meeting with staff. So I did get a response from staff, but if it could be read out for other councillors. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, through to you.
Thank you.
There's a number of questions there. So
Yeah, there's a number of questions there. Renee, our coordinator of governance and risk, will answer some of them, and I'm sure our two directors, in which the other two questions, signage and lighting, can provide responses as well.
Thank you and good afternoon. So in regards to the oval, it's not in the leased premise area. Just to note that first of all, the oval shelters and the scoreboard do not require approval under a Class 10A structure, which is exempt from a building approval. the club is responsible for the shelters, scoreboard and signage, and it appears these structures have been there since a minimum of 2018 of when we could research back to. The signage, the sponsorship signage on the oval is the responsibility of the club, and as long as, just to note, as long as the signage is facing internal to the oval, it doesn't require planning approval, which I've spoken to the manager of planning in relation to. And also signage facing a public street requires planning approval under policy 4.1.15 advertisements, just to note. The use of Brunswick Rec Centre change rooms and how are these managed. The Brunswick Rec Centre is a Shire managed building, and also to note the bookings are done through the Shire. So the change rooms are part of the Rec Centre and managed by the Shire. The lighting I will leave, and there was a mention of the ceiling replacement in a recent email. There's been quite a bit of correspondence in relation to this lease. The recent email was the 27th of October, which it was raised by the club, and it was raised in their intention of how much they would contribute to the repair of the ceiling. However, it was noted that the appendix of the policy actually relates to the maintenance, not the replacement, and they were satisfied with my response as being the appendix page 1 relates to repairs only. The repair would be 50% by the Shire and 50% by the tenant. However, if the ceiling is required to be replaced, not due to damage of the club, it would fall under 0.3.1.5, which was on page 4 of the policy, and the Shire would pay for the replacement, which that would come under the renovations, refurbishment and improvements to the facilities. And I think that was all on my answers. It's just the lighting that needs to be addressed. Thank you.
Thanks, Renee. So the lighting, in regards to the lighting?
Yes, the tender closed, and we're assessing the tender at the moment, and we'll be looking at taking an item to the December meeting.
That's just a question. So the question is, how will the replacement of the lights on the oval be funded and maintained in the future?
Sorry, Kate. Well, obviously the funding has been sourced by a community development team in terms of whether the Director of Community Lifestyles got some more to add to that.
Thank you, Director. I'll, through the Chair, also add to the question about lighting, so that will become Shire infrastructure, responsible for the maintenance and upkeep of the lights, by which the club and all users will be paid a fee through the Shire's fees and charges, which is a public document endorsed by Council.
Thank you. So, councillors, are there any further questions for this item? Thank you. 5.1.4, lease for Lot 208 Youth Incorporated. Councillors, are there any questions? Thank you. 5.2.1, Braidwood Drive, Baldwin Road and Leisure Drive, proposed traffic safety improvements. Any questions, councillors? I did have one. I had a look at the diagram, and my concern is with those cushions, is there a possibility that we'll be diverting the traffic through to another road?
Yeah, look, it's always a possibility when you look at a traffic management plan, and you know, how far do you go? And if the problem, look, if we followed, when we follow the process, if the residents are in favour, we'll see what sort of comments come back. For me, it's pretty full on what we're proposing. So I'm anticipating lots of comments coming back, and I can't possibly see that proposal going as we've presented. That's probably the worst case scenario. And then obviously we can come back to council with a recommendation. If there's any flow-on effect elsewhere, we just need to address that if and when it happens.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure we'll get some comments.
Yeah.
Okay, councillors, 5.2.2 options. Oh, correct. Oh, Councillor Bronwyn. Sorry.
Thank you, Madam President. Yeah, just a quick question in relation to the climbing devices and how far they will be from the roundabouts, so that really is the distance going to be substantially enough so that cars can actually get straight before they go over these obstacles.
Yeah, obviously council will be designing to the standards what really is included in the generalisers with the concept plan. Yeah, the idea is to try to slow them down at those roundabouts. Yeah, whether you only need one on the approach and then you don't need one as they exit. I mean, it's something we can sort of look at in the design phase if and when there's support for it.
Thank you.
Councillor Crispin.
Just a question on them. Is there when it comes to long-term use for them, is like an asphalt speed bumper more appropriate if it's a little bit more expensive, or are these more expensive with a shorter term of life?
Look, speed cushions, you can easily take them out if things change and new residents move into the area or whatever. You take asphalt ones out too, but it's more expensive. They're going to build them out and whatnot. These just unbolt them. And look, obviously asphalt's more permanent, but and a little bit more expensive, and we've only got a certain amount on budget this year if this goes ahead. But look, happy to look at when it comes back to council, look at the options and the costs.
Thank you.
Any further questions, councillors? Thank you. 5.2.2 options for additional office accommodation. I'm just going to ask the Director of Infrastructure Services just to give us a quick overview on this one. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, look, obviously, a fair bit of information in the report, so I'll just summarise a couple of bits and pieces. In the background, obviously, Council in the past has considered a number of matters. One is the Australian Community Precinct in terms of having office accommodation down here, and also in December 2021 there's a report on the shortage of office accommodation, where there was a proposal to extend the lease or to approve a lease at Mulgara House, which we're currently in at the moment. There's 7 workstations there. And in June 2023, a larger area down at Mulgara House became available, and there was a council decision that we look at possibly leasing that larger area. Significantly more expensive per annum than the current lease. Look, however, those negotiations didn't progress any further as we started to look at more cost-effective, possibly cost-effective options. So this report sort of looks at some of those options, and also the purpose of this report is that former Councillor Beach presented a notice of motion in September 2023 that authorised the CEO to investigate using either this chamber or the Harvey chamber for office accommodation. So that's discussed in this report also, but prior to that, we were already looking at the options prior to that notice of motion, and on page 3 of the agenda item, we're looking at option 1, which is modifying the existing hospital and admin centre, which is a wing on the southeast corner of the admin centre, and those works have been completed, and that's created 3 more workstation areas there. Option 2, we were already looking at this chamber. We were looking at segregating the chamber, still keep the functioning council chamber and also have some office accommodation. And that bit of tape down there on the ground in front of will show you where we were proposing to put the wall. So there'll be a wall that goes this way on that line. This will become the council chamber and that'll be the office accommodation. And we can fit 8 workstations in there. So that was that. The other thing was looking at a transportable, a donga, and we did the costing, where would we site it, and that, and we looked at sort of having it in the car park area. Obviously you lose some parking and whatnot. The advantages are that we can just have our communications cables from the building straight into it. Are expensive to buy, long time to get one at the moment. And the advantage, I suppose, is that at the end of it, when we don't need it anymore, we can sell it. But it's going to take a while to get one, and all the costs of that are discussed here. So looking at the what we can do if we use this whole chamber or the Harvey chamber, that's all discussed in the report in terms of probably fit about 16 spaces. Look, there's various options. It depends how you design it. We've come up with a design of 16 spaces if we use the whole chamber, both here and up in Harvey. And we've talked about some advantages and disadvantages of doing that. Staff still use the chamber for meetings and all sorts of things, so it's a valuable office space. It's almost another meeting room sometimes. So we'd be reluctant to lose the chamber, and I think the other advantage of having 2 chambers is that it gives people from this area access to a council meeting where they probably would want to drive up to Harvey, and also gives councillors the chance to sort of be here and there. So look, the officer recommendation here in the report is that we don't support using the entire chamber for office accommodation, but we do support looking at possibly segregating this chamber in Australia, not Harvey, to create some office accommodation on the south side of that bit of tape there. And we've worked out, we've put a door to the outside down there. We'll take those steps away from the public gallery, and you can fit more seats in if you take that tiered seating away. And the plans and whatnot are included in the agenda items. So between now and the council meeting, probably got a bit of time just to mull over it and have a look at the plans and see what you think.
Thanks, Mr. Lotsnicker. Are there any questions from councillors? I'm happy, thank you. Item 5.2.3, proposed closure of road pin 116249552. Do we have any questions around that one, councillors? Okay, sustainable development. Item 5.3.1, application for overheight outbuilding at lot 14, number 11, McMahon Court, UDUC. Are there any questions there, councillors? I just have one that it's quite a significant increase or on what's in our policy.
Yes, thanks, Madam Chair. Look, it is a sizeable departure from it, but because of the size of the property, it's in a rural area. It's not that dissimilar to other normal rural sheds that wouldn't be applicable to this policy.
Okay, councillors, item 5.3.2, proposed use not listed, telecommunications infrastructure. I'm just going to ask Manager Planning Services, Director, my apologies, Director Sustainable Development, just to show us some photos and the like that his staff have taken in regards to this item.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I just would like to point out a couple of technical points or some clarification based on Mr Stammers' deputation. These are not mobile phone telecommunication towers. They're an NBN network. It's an NBN funded program from the state and Commonwealth departments, and these are 3 of a total of 6 towers that have been approved by the federal government to be located within our shire. It is actually a regional program as well. It's extending into Busselton and also into Capel. So there is a recognition statewide and Australia-wide that this particular region, the Southwest, is very deficient when it comes to NBN services. So this is why this particular project is being presented to you this afternoon. The company Swoop have gone through an extensive 12, nearly 18-month program now of site selection. NBN is required to have line of sight, so there may be, we know in this particular location there are 3 other sites that were identified. This site is actually the best when it looks at the technical term of triangulation with Binningup, Bunbury and Harvey as well. So there is some scope to move some of these towers, but from the operational perspective, this is considered to be the most optimal, and Mr. Stenners is correct. It's optimal, but it also has a supporting landowner, so let's not overlook that fact, because if the landowner doesn't support it, the tower wouldn't be there. The 2 other towers that were being referred to by Mr. Stanners, the one in Brunswick and the one in Kemerton itself, they are correct. They are actually owned privately by Arc Infrastructure for one, and I'm not sure, it must be ACO Gas, it's the other one. We have repeatedly asked for them to actually co-locate and put other services on them. It is against their policies to have anybody share Arc Infrastructure's infrastructure, so that is a direct line of sight up to Beulah Valley, so it controls the train network, and the other one controls the Bunbury Dampier gas pipeline. So co-location of those was not considered appropriate by the operators of those towers. During probably just one last thing, in terms of the Rockingham policy, the policy there is specific for them, it's got nothing to do with us. We used to have a policy for telecommunications towers. State planning policy 5.2 came in a couple of years ago that we're all governed by anyway, so it's pointless replicating a policy, but it is actually developed in a rural area, and we apply planning principles to all applications regardless of the type of structure. So the issues of visual amenity setbacks are always taken into account with whatever structure it is. Additionally, through the advertising or through the assessment process, staff did actually go out on site, and I actually went out this morning to have a look at this tower in relation to the existing houses that are there. So you can see on the screen where the tower is located, and Mr. Stanners is right, it sort of wraps around his existing parcel of land. No, photo number 2, or directional arrow number 2, is actually taken from the rear of Mr. Stanners' house, and I will have a look at it. That is from the rear of the house. So yes, bear in mind it doesn't have some of the stays on it, and it doesn't have the solar panels around it, but it is a very accurate scaled representation of what that's actually going to look like. So just for council's point of view, just wanted to let you know that we did actually go out and have a look at the property, took appropriate photos. That is from the adjoining parcel of land from Pendrut Road, and it isn't exorbitantly higher than the existing vegetation that's there, and as mentioned, it is actually in a line of sight with other towers that it actually communicates with. So the terminology that was used by Mr. Stanners, completely agree with. We need to apply a balance with regard to the statutory environment, the need for mobile communications with NBN network, and unfortunately there is a degree of visual impact when you put them in rural areas. So when taking all those into account, the officer's recommendation is that this, on balance, is actually an appropriate location for this particular town.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. As a result of that information, councillors, is there any further questions? Councillor Bronwyn.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Hall, I sent you through some questions earlier, and also I asked you about the distance from towers in relation to any health impacts.
I'm going to quote the consultant on this one because it's quite an interesting figure. If you were sitting close to your television at home, it actually produces more EMF radiation than these towers. However, there is an exclusion zone within 1.5 to 2 metres of the actual unit itself. So if this was ground mounted or in an urban area whereby it was on a roof, or whether it's a residential roof or a commercial roof, there's an exclusion zone of 1.5 to 2 metres. The preference is to go to 3, just to make it easier, and you are actually required to shut these facilities down prior to any workmen working on them, because if they're working on them and they're still operational, there's a 5-minute time. 5 minutes within any 30 minutes is a safe operational distance when working on them. This, because it's 30 metres in the air, there isn't actually any reasonable need for an exclusion zone from them, because the EMF radiation is not actually considered a risk when it's elevated in the air like that. So that is the advice we've received from them. So there is no statutory setback or any other requirement from them because of their low emissions.
Mr. Stammers, this is councillors to ask questions, sir. Thank you. Councillor Capobrego.
Thank you, Madam President. Just got a question, Mr. Hall. What's the exclusion zone for the tower for aerial, like if a light plane was fertilising or spraying, or as we have, spraying for mosquitoes, whatever it might be, what's the exclusion zone from the tower?
I would need to check with CASA on that one.
Okay. The reason why I asked the question is that this is in an agricultural zone, and modern farming techniques now, we use aerial spraying and fertilising, and all of a sudden we've got a big tower that's in the middle of a paddock that we may not be able to complete the tasks required to keep farming. So that's the question I've got, is there an exclusion zone? I'm sure there is, but we don't know what it is. Is that what I'm saying? Okay. And also, if we can go to the first photo that we had with the numbers on it, I'm just trying to identify. So that parcel of land where the tower is, that shaped block, that is one parcel of land, right, that's owned by a particular person, and then the next piece that goes all the way around is the land that's owned by Mr. Stammers, is that correct?
Correct. So that is the parcel of land on which the application has been lodged,
yeah.
And the rest of the parcel of land is Mr. Stammers' property. As mentioned, he has subdivided that out many years ago, but it is in a separate landowners.
Okay. And my final question is, do we have any policies or restrictions on locating the tower? Is there an area where they can't be close to the natural trees? Like, do we have a zone that you've got to be away from trees by a certain amount, or can it be moved? If it was going to be moved, could it be moved closer to the trees?
Okay. So the only statutory requirement we have is consistent with the scheme in terms of 20 metres. Sorry. Is 20 metres from side boundaries. There is no prescribed setbacks from vegetation. They would be governed by a number of environmental factors. One would be shade. So these require solar. Yep. So you're not going to put them in an area whereby there's overshadowing for the solar panels. Similarly, you're not going to want to put them in a location whereby you're increasing the risk or the exposure to bushfire. The other thing is you're not going to want to put them in a drip line, so if it's a 30-metre high tree, you're not going to want that to fall over and take out your stay wires, which, whilst the tower is here, you have stays that generally go out about 40 to 50 metres, so you wouldn't want anything that would actually compromise the structural integrity of that if something fell. So it'd be practical separation distance as opposed to a statutory one.
All right, thank you.
Councillor Brumman.
Thank you, Madam President, through you. Can you basically provide me with the understanding of the benefits to the community? How many people is this going to impact? And then secondly, what are the range of these towers? And how effective are they at their maximum range, given the issues with data transfer?
Through you, Madam Chair, you're starting to get into a technical basis, and the business case that was put together by Swoop to the state and federal government was that really the entire Harvey region is actually benefiting from these because of the 6 towers that are going into our shire. So to answer your question, all residents within our shire are a beneficiary of this. You also can extend that to anyone that's actually travelling down here from Perth on a Friday or a long weekend. We have major business operators, Crooked Carrot, the 2 service stations, that cannot use FBOS machines because their NBN facilities are not capable when everyone's using Google Maps coming down the highway. So there is actually a broader benefit to the community from those that just live here. We have the likes of Harvey Fresh, Harvey Beef, that are, and even Albemarle, cannot actually operate effectively all year or all day with continued full capacity. For example, when Albemarle was actually being constructed during SMOCO, they couldn't communicate with China or America because their bandwidth was gone because all the workers were on their phone. So that's more anecdotal. There are some technical provisions that Swoop have provided to us. So yeah, that is hopefully broader benefit that this program will actually generate.
Okay,
Another question in there.
No, it's not a question I was going to say. So what I'm understanding is this is going to fix that problem in relation to our area. That's what you're telling me.
I'm not saying yes because I'm not designing it. It's going to significantly improve the level of NBN service that we have within our region, yes. And effectiveness, over a distance, we understand around about 30 to 50 metres is their optimal distance. That's why we've got the 6 and not any less anymore. These ones will actually be talking to the water tower in Binningup on the hill there, Water Corp owned infrastructure, and also back to the Bunbury Tower to actually help that triangulation. So that distance, they're very effective the entire way. There's no lead or no lag the longer you go. So they've designed them to fit within that technical range.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Crispin.
Just a question in regards to, I was trying to find the map, because it's 20 metres off boundaries, but the stays of the anchors go out 40 to 50 metres. Will they be, that's still got this, like this same block there, obviously where the tower site is, that's...
So the development itself includes all the stays, so we would put the footing of the stay
on then 20
metres.
Ah, okay, thank you.
You still need to have your fire breaks and things.
Yeah, that's what I was, yeah.
Councillor Caboni.
So these are privately owned?
Yes.
So if another private company wants to come along, they can put towers up as well?
They can do.
Another operator?
They can do. It's not a cheap exercise, and most of these are actually state or Commonwealth funded entities. You also get to a point where, so NBN provides its services in 3 ways: fibre to the node, tower and satellite. So they've delivered, as a Commonwealth government, they've delivered an NBN network that meets their obligation of connecting Australia. There are areas within that that are deficient and are causing problems to those people in that.
Satellite pretty much gets everywhere.
Satellite does, yes, can do.
So my concern is that anyone can pop any of these towers up all over the Shire, and it can keep going. So we want to bring in a policy for accommodation camps, which we really have no say over anyway because of state planning, like you mentioned before. But we don't have a policy on towers, so we can just put towers willy-nilly anywhere over the Shire. So should we have a policy on towers because we want to do it for accommodation camps?
Similar to the Telecommunications Act actually provides a minimum level of service, and you wouldn't benefit from actually just putting one tower as an individual owner because you don't actually have a network that you are actually connecting into. You are creating your own network with a series of towers that actually create that network.
Yeah, I understand that. The point I'm making is how do we stop the expanding of towers through the Shire, where we're just going to have these towers dotted all over the landscape? You've got ARC Infrastructure doing it, Water Corp doing it, this mob doing it, NBN doing it, where does it, Telstra doing it, Vodafone doing it, Optus doing it.
I don't actually have an answer for you, councillor, in terms of where it's going to stop.
So
And our
how do we get that they can start sharing towers of that, like they do up on top of Talbot Hill, Brunswick, for example, where there's multiple users up on that hill that use the same tower?
That is always our first position, sorry, through you. Okay. That is always our first position in trying to encourage others to co-locate, and we have done that successfully more in the urban areas. In the rural areas, not so much. And it also comes down to the licensing agreement between the landowner and the provider. So Optus traditionally aren't very friendly to others. Telstra is more friendly, and NBN, this is the first time that we've been exposed to any application that is specific to NBN, because we deal with the mobile phones, telecommunications, weekly, and upgrading and putting in new infrastructure on existing towers. But this one specifically for NBN, we haven't been successful in getting co-located at this stage.
Councillor Bromham.
Just clarification, so this is federal legislation basically in relation to where towers are placed and how the system works.
Telecommunications Act is a Commonwealth legislation.
I suppose my final question, just finishing up, is there any room for negotiation to relocate this within that property that the landowner's happy to have the tower?
Madam Chair, very happy to have a chat to Swoop and see what other options they've got. Yeah, I can have that discussion and report that back for next week.
Thank you. No further questions, councillors? Thank you. Corporate Services, item 5.4.1, financial statement as at the 31st of October 2023. Are there any questions, councillors? 5.4.2, list of accounts paid October 2023. Any questions? 5.4.3, Bunbury Harvey Regional Council operating contribution request for 23-24. Councillors, are there any questions? Okay. 5.4.4, Bunbury Harvey Regional Council equity split. Do we have any questions, councillors? Councillor Dickinson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It was actually very good to see this and have this presented to us. It has been a bit of a bone of contention for a period of time, so to actually see these figures was really good. I'm just wondering what period the equity split covers. So will it cover like a 12-month period or a longer period, and will it be up for review? And what time frame would it be up for review? Thank you.
Thank you. And through the chair, the purpose of this report was two-sided. One was last year OAG in our annual financial report had an objection that we are not presenting the BHRC's financials according to the latest accounting standards. And because our constitution was very old, way back in 1990, and there was no mention of how the equity split will happen. And there was a disagreement between City of Bunbury and Shire of Harvey regarding the equity split percentages. So that was the reason of we going back to a third party, that is AMD, to give us an advice on what's the equity split should be between Shire of Harvey and City of Bunbury. They suggested 46% and 54%. On that basis, we will be presenting our annual financial reports, under which we will be putting BHRC at 46%. As far as the period of this is concerned, we will be going back to City of Bunbury and negotiating the agreement with them, and the period of review will be part of that agreement.
Thank you, Phil. Are there any other questions? 5.5.1, the dissolution of the Coastal Communities Reserve Grant. I'll just ask the Director if you could just give us just a quick update around this item. Thank you.
Thank you, President. I might invite the Manager of Community and Recreation down to the microphone as the author of the report, to respond to that question.
Thank you very much, Director, and thank you, Chair. So we've put a report in community on the Coastal Dissolution Fund. We were contacted by the Water Corporation and the Southern Seawater Alliance to actually have a look at dissolving the fund, because they would like to, sorry, apologies. So what they would like to do is they would like to dissolve the fund and the agreement in place, and actually use the existing funds to actually put together a legacy project, which we have actually put together in this report for you all.
Thank you. Councillor Dickinson, you had a question?
Yes, I was just basically wanting to know what the community feeling was in regards to this proposal.
Okay, I can take that, thank you very much through the Chair. So this is actually a decision of Council as part of an existing agreement, whether to agree to dissolve the reserve or not. After Council have made an actual decision, we will actually be going out to the community based on recommendations that Council agrees to actually consult with the community.
Any further questions, councillors? Thank you, Andrew. 5.5.2 is a confidential item, so it's the Australia Day Awards for 2024. If there's any questions, I'll move it to behind closed doors. Thank you. 5.5.3, request for unbudgeted funds for the Leschenault Men's Shed. Councillors, do we have any questions? Thank you. Item 6, notice of motion for the following meeting. We have an update notice of motion from Councillor Caboni that Council considers abolishing the Welcome to Country and Acknowledgement of Country at the Shire of Harvey, and requests the Chief Executive Officer bring the relevant policy to Council for review. Councillors, are there any questions in regards to operational matters in regards to this notice of motion?
Yeah, nice.
Councillor Caboni.
Just on process, can the CEO just update us? How is the person that does the welcome or acknowledgement to council selected? Is it done individually to an individual, or do you just go through an organisation? What ratepayers' money gets expended on it, if any, and does that go to the individual or to an organisation or trust? And are there any guidelines put in place, or do we ask them to, or do we have any set parameters basically, or is it just like a free-for-all?
In your last question, I would suggest it's not a free-for-all, that we do have a policy.
Well, for the want of a better word, yeah.
Yes, but we do have a policy around the welcome to country and acknowledgement to country. So, so councillors may be aware that that policy was coming to council this month and is now being deferred due to this notice of motion. In regards to the operational questions that you're asking, I'll refer them to the CEO.
I'll just start in regards to when we actually engage Aboriginal people to provide the welcome to country. We specifically look at the area in which we're meeting so that we can engage directly with the Aboriginal people in that location. And it is either done through in Harvey, through the Harvey Aboriginal Corporation, or it is done on an individual basis. Now, in regards to some of the specifics in relation to when we've engaged Aboriginal people for the Welcome to Country and other events, I'll pass through to the Director of Community and Lifestyle, who has some statistics and information in that regard.
Thank you, Councillor, and through the President, and anticipating what kind of questions may come up today, we did a little exercise. And in line with the policy over the last 5 years, 54 events have occurred in line with the Welcome to Country policy. They're typically Australia Day, citizenship, NAIDOC, tourism events such as the Mooka City, and official openings where ministers are invited for facilities, etc. Of those 54 events over the 5 years, just under $30,000 or $28,599 of expenditure has gone towards that, so that's approximately $500 per event. In line with the policy, and as the CEO did outline, we've spent our time over the last few years developing a relationship with the organisations and the individuals in each place, and that's how we follow that policy to appoint people for the Welcome to Countries.
Thank you, staff. Councillor Coleman.
Thanks, Madam President. Just wanting to know, to bring the relevant policy to Council for review, is there now a new timeline on that we can expect that to happen? Because I understand it's been pushed back, but when will we expect that to happen?
My understanding is February, but I'll confirm that through the CEO if you have a time.
Look, staff, as a matter of process, were looking to review that policy and had been consulting with our Aboriginal community, and it was going to come to the November meeting, but obviously we've held that back because there is this notice of motion. I would consider as a result of this notice of motion there would be the need to engage further and potentially workshop it with councillors and then bring it back. So probably March, April, I would suggest going through that process would be an appropriate timeline.
Councillor Coleman?
So sorry, just to follow up on that, the way that the updated notice of motion is written, does that suggest that prior to the policy coming to Council for review, that a decision is required whether to abolish it, a welcome or not, prior to that policy being presented?
I would suggest that through this notice of motion, it states considers abolishing the Welcome to Country and Acknowledgement of Country. So if this was, if this notice of motion was supported by Council, we would look to bring the policy for review as stated at the end of the policy, but noting that it was supported in regards to the consideration of the abolishment of those events and acknowledgements. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. That would give us some sort of indication as to where Council was going with the policy and what they potentially would want excluded, or whether the policy was deleted in its entirety.
Thank you, councillors. I'll move on to matters behind closed doors. Are there any questions in regards to these items that would require us to go behind closed doors? So item 7.1.1, the tender T092023, supply and delivery of limestone sub-base road material. No questions? 7.1.2, tender T102023, supply and delivery of a gravel base course. No questions? And tender. Item 7.1.3, tender T122023, provision of new playground equipment at Lakewood Shores Estate, Binning Up in Galway Green Estate. I do have one question. It's not to do with the tender, it's more to do with the Galway Green site. That looks to be considerably bigger than what the current site is in Galway Green, and I note that there's an inclusion of barbecue and shelter and the like. So are we still looking at that same area within Galway Green?
Yeah, look, Madam Chair, Shane Faber, the Manager of Park Services, is in the gallery. I'm I'll invite him along to answer those questions.
Welcome, Shane.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. The footprints for all the sites is exactly the same. So we basically retained the existing limestone blocks, so we didn't want to try and incur any more costs with removing those. So all of the 3 sites will be the same. And your question around the barbecue, we do have a slight underspend if council adopts the recommendations, and part of our policy currently on the playground procedure and policy talks about looking at other infrastructure, so we thought it was an opportunity to put a shelter and barbecue in for Galway Green. It's been called for by the community, and at the moment they have very little infrastructure there that supports those sorts of things.
Good outcome. Are there any further questions? Nothing to do with the tender, Councillor Capogrego?
I've just got a question. Lakewood Shores, the location of that area, where is it?
Through the chair, it's Portillo Lane, so it's basically right on the edge of the development, so the Lakewood Shores Golf Course development. It's about 2 blocks in, I guess you could say. So it was built by the developer at the time. It's probably one of our worst conditions playgrounds, so it's definitely up for replacement.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, councillors, any further questions on that item? Thanks, Shane.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, being no more further business,